We're talking about a buzzword today, John.
Artificial intelligence. Every day I come across numerous social media posts about how AI is going to be doing everything I do as a CFO. I just couldn't agree with that less. It is going to disrupt our workflows. The human gut feel is still going to be incredibly important. Dylan, episode 28, what's happening, man?
We're talking about a buzzword today, John. A popular 2-letter acronym. It's going to be a fun one.
AI, artificial intelligence. LLMs. Is that what it's called? Yeah, LLM. I think I hear a lot of people talk. What is that? Learning?
Large language model.
Large language model. There we go. See, I don't even know. I'm excited to chat. I think there's obviously in the marketing world and the finance world, there's every day I come across numerous social media posts about how I'm going to lose my job. And AI is going to be doing everything I do as a CFO. I have some very strong opinions and some predictions, and some, hey, I don't know how this is going to pan out. So I'm excited to hear the same for you. So, okay, Dylan, before we get into some of your takes, what's the most annoying thing that you hear on social media about how AI is going to change your business that you don't agree with?
I would say that I think the creative roles become even more important in an era of AI. I think it's gonna be disruption, don't get me wrong, and a lot of things, but like I don't buy into like fully AI creative, at least in like the short to medium term. So that's my I think that's the most popular one. I think a lot of people theorize that like the creative is gonna be the layer that goes first, but I don't think so. What you?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me, so I was sitting over here thinking.
Yeah, oh no, I asked the question first.
Got
It's gonna
turned
come
the
back.
table.
It's gonna come.
Well, I think it's that like AI is going to pull like such meaningful prescriptive financial insights that you don't need a CFO anymore. And I just couldn't agree with that less. And it's because, and by the way, it is going to disrupt our workflows 100%. I'm definitely on board with that. And we're looking for ways to embrace AI. But the reality is a good CFO, a crappy CFO just pulls insights from the financial data that they do analysis on. That's what a crappy CFO does. A good CFO pulls together multifunctional strategic context and assessments of risk versus returns and assessments of humans in that business that have personal goals. Brings that all together to help place better strategic decisions. And I think AI is a long ways away from doing that in a way that a CEO or founder is going to be able to bounce ideas off of and strategize with, and then pick a course of action that they feel confident in.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think, like, from my POV, what's most likely to happen in the short term is like things will get sped up. So like you can do more work with less like labor input. So I think that a lot of professional services, it may be a little bit different in different kind of like sub niches, but like one person will be able to do more. This also goes for employees. Like one person will be able to do more, but you almost become like more efficient because of it. And you can maybe even do better work because of how much more analysis you can do. So I think there's going to be some interesting like pricing pressure, both on like salaries, services, et cetera, et cetera. But I largely agree with you. I also think that there's a large element, especially in like the financial realm, maybe even more so than the marketing realm, where it's such a personal thing, like you said, like personal goal and like multiple kind of like wants and desires, and you're kind of juggling with various shareholders, owners, etc. That you also just want to have a person to talk to about things. And I think that's like it sounds maybe silly to say it that way, but I think that actually plays a really, really big role as well. Just to kind of sit down, have a chat, go through your options. I think that stays for a very long time. From my perspective, I've got a few hot takes on what I think is going to most likely happen in the marketing org. I don't spend much time thinking about this as much in the finance org. So I'm not sure, John, if you want to dive into anything else on your side, or I can share some of my hotter takes of the day if you want.
No, like I want to know are your thoughts on how AI is going to change D2C marketing?
Yeah. I think that the the two types of roles that I think will excel the most will probably be people who have exceptional ability with coming up with new creative ideas and the auditing what is worth sending. So I think that what's going to happen is for certain types of assets, AI is going to be able to make like I'm going to call it like A minus to A creative variations like crazy. So right now there's like one school of thought in Meta where like it's just launch as many ads as you can and more shots on goal potentially means like better outcomes. And we at Aplo we tend to subscribe more to that, but it's a balance between quality and quantity. Like you can't have quantity in the absence of quality. And I think that what's going to occur is if you take that to the extreme, do you want to launch 100,000 ads? Because that may legitimately be possible. I'm not even sure Meta's system would that would make sense with your budget, right? So when you take that back, it's the making of the asset becomes more commodified, but you still need someone to go in and decide what they think should be ran. Maybe make small tweaks, and or I think when you start thinking of this from like an LLM standpoint, as you make more stuff based off of what's already working, you never actually go and do that net new idea. And it's not to say that LLMs can't do that net new idea, but sometimes it's just like I think that's where the human continues to excel. So basically, I think like creative strategists, also designers who kind of like can elevate their skill set and continue to make designs and edit designs, but do it with like taste in mind for what's likely to work. I still think that's going to become even more important because basically what's happening is the floor is raised. Everyone can make a gazillion variations in the next year, years, months, whatever. But I think that role becomes like hyper important because I think that's going to be one of the difference makers. The other role that I think is going to become increasingly more important is I think that like and I have some bias here, but uh I've never been a huge fan of like software tools that try to automate media buying cross-functionally across multiple different ad platforms. Or sorry, any specific ad platform. And the reason why is because like a platform like Meta, like I don't think you're gonna like beat Meta's AI with your AI. Like I think that these ad platforms are gonna become so much better in the years to come. Like honestly, for a lot of brands, it's already practically automated. Like once you have your, as long as you know your objective, you can set that up properly in an ad account. The game then becomes creative by and large. Sure, a human has to go in there, time it here and there and make tweaks. But like these platforms are so effective. I think what becomes even more important then is having someone who can cross-functionally actually manage from ad account and Facebook and Google and Klaviyo and SMS and all these other channels and actually oversee all these systems instead of being as like niched down and only an expert in Klaviyo or only an expert in this. I think that this leverage is basically going to allow for like that kind of like almost like CMO or VP of marketing type person to get more in the weeds again and get more leverage on their time actually doing things. Those are the two things that I think two roles I think that are going to become like the most prevalent that people should kind of like try to skew their skill set towards in the coming years. I also could be very wrong, but those are the things that I think are going to happen the most the types of skill sets that will be the most valuable in a D2C organization.
Yeah, that is interesting and makes a lot of sense to me. Again, it is follows this kind of conceptual belief that I have that like you'll be able to crank out the volume of outputs and whatever you're doing a lot quicker within like kind of single disciplines. But the ability to take multiple disciplines and actually make decisions that align resources to a cohesive strategy, right? Is going to be super, super key and still very much like the human element side of it. And then there's also just like a big part of like being an entrepreneur and being innovative is like having this gut feel that there's this move that needs to be made that's not intuitive or logical to everybody. The human gut like gut feel is still going to be incredibly important, right? And it might defy the data that, or the trends in the data that AI is using, right, to carry out whatever activity is. I mean, it's the classic, like, I don't know if you've ever, this is an old one, but there's this book called The Innovator's Dilemma that I read a long time ago. It's about a lot of things, but in a nutshell, it's that, like, how do these small, innovative, like, startups, like, take out these huge incumbents, right? It's because they separate themselves from the data sets and trends that these big, large incumbents have to follow to stay alive, right? And they detach themselves from those, and they can do these disruptive things that defy the data and defy the trends. And that's why, like, really big businesses, big Fortune 500 companies that, like, have these incubators or, like, these spin-offs, um, they're more successful if they spin it off into its own entity and detach it from the large organization, because the data, the logical and data-driven trends within that larger organization can't allow that disruptive thing to flourish. And so I just think
Yeah,
the
it's like
human gut is huge, is going to be huge, and using and pointing AI in the right direction, I guess, so to speak.
Y yeah, it's like a risk-adjusted bet. If you're already doing something that is working and you're trying to forecast it reasonably, you can basically look at the past historical data, extrapolate it forward with some amount of confidence, and come to the conclusion that that is, in fact, the optimal path forward. But some
Totally.
things aren't all based in historical data and are actually more, like, net new in nature or, like, conceptual. So I think that
Totally.
makes total sense. I think that, like, one thing I also foresee is I think that, like, in the ad spend world, you see a lot of these tools having like MMMs, incrementality tests, et cetera, et cetera. I do think in the next couple of years, you're gonna see, like, some of these softwares be able to, like, daily rebalance your ad accounts through multiple, like ad channels, be it like Facebook, TikTok. I think that, like, logically, it should be possible for that to be done better than a human. But I still think when it comes to, like, the coordination of, like, the new products, when to launch, how to launch, what kind of creative to start with when there's no historical data, how do you then input it? Because you're still going to have a human basically for a long time interact then with the automated media buying, like, between channels, if that makes sense. Like, I think that, like, it really comes down to, again, like, kind of this, like, air traffic controller, if you will, overseeing multiple, like, systems running at once. And then I really think creative's gonna matter more and more and more. I mean, Meta's pushing that so hard right now with, like, Andromeda was, like, last year, but, like, it's a popular term in the D2C community right now. And, like, the direction is creative is going to be more and more and more of, like, the driving the growth story. But when you're trying to grow
Yeah.
the pre-existing set of products that you have, creative is really the only lever, or one of the only levers you have, to really make a difference. So I think those are those are kind of like the two key roles I see excelling the most. Is there any role that you think you see, like, evolving the most with some of the changes on the finance side?
The finance one is funny because, accountants and, I'll pick on accountants first, like, um, which, by the way, like, I started on the accounting track, then became a CFO, so I'm picking on myself. Accountants are notoriously stubborn, individuals, about automation, but then there certainly is the aspect of, or the camp of, like, hey, if this gets automated away, what's the point of my job, right? I can't charge for the effort or the hours anymore. That exists. But I think people don't talk enough about this other one, which is accountants are the keepers of quality assurance, of data integrity on the general ledger. And when things get automated and automations screw up data integrity, that is like a no-no in the accounting world. The whole reason we have month-end close and reconciliations, it's cross-checks and double checks to confirm that the data is accurate and is actually representative of the business's financial position and financial operations. And so accountants are resistant to automation, whether it's AI driven or not, because they're afraid of poor quality data, right? And they're usually putting their stamp of approval when they hand this off to bankers, equity investors, business owners. They're saying this is accurate and it's got my stamp of approval. So I think AI is moving slower through accountants than maybe other disciplines. because of that data integrity challenge, accountants are heck, there's a whole profession around it. CPAs, auditors. There's a license around providing the public markets with reasonable assurance that the financials they're placing public investments, equity investments on are reliable, right? And so that being said, my take is that financial accounting, bookkeeping is the first to get disrupted. It already is, and it has been. But it's not to the point yet today where there's any like fully AI driven bookkeeping solutions and there's no human intervention. It is humans overseeing AI to make things like coding expenses to the right accounts much more streamlined and a lot faster. Finishing a reconciliation of like cash account balance to on the general ledger to the actual banking institution in real time. But there's still a human who needs to intervene on it. So like the thing is, the accountants that are embracing these things, they're the ones who are like, hey, I don't want to be coding transactions and doing the checking off of transactions to do a bank rec, but I'm going to come up with savvy ways to cross-check whether or not AI and automated transaction entry and reconciliation is getting me to an end balance that like I can check the box and say, I put my stamp of approval that I have confirmed that these AI-driven financials are indeed accurate, right? And I'll tell you, like we use some tools that are like, tech or AI driven for automated accounting, and they're not perfect. And the developers of those tools know that they're not perfect. And we work together, always incrementally trying to improve them. But ultimately, a human is there to make sure that things are done the right way and don't go haywire. So that's the first thing. The second thing is obviously FP&A analysis. I think that where there's going to be the most leverage from AI in FP&A is the ability to get data sets that are non-financial at a granular level to analyze trends and correlations as drivers in FP&A models. For example, marketing data, like the correlation of marketing data, inventory, SKU sell-through, inventory planning data, like data in non-financial areas of the business that can be analyzed using AI with the ability to like then as a CFO go like, I want to pull these in as drivers into my financial model, and then also have AI monitor these KPIs throughout the month for me to assess if I'm getting off track and suggesting why we may be getting off track. There's a tool that some friends of mine are developing, and like the AI is not saying do this exact thing, but it's saying, hey, your gross margin dollars per order are down by this much. And through analyzing the data, it looks like your new customer AOV has decreased by 10% and your CAC has gone up by 15%. It's flagging for you in real time. Why did your new customer AOV go down and your CAC went up? That's driving new customer gross margin dollars per order down. And so it's sending you in the direction that you should dive deeper as a human to figure out what might be going on.
I think the strategist and the executive or like leader or team leader, whatever you want to call it, I think that role, I think more often you'll see more of that kind of like collapsing into one.
Yeah,
There
for
will
sure.
there will still be cases where you do not have that, and there's like people doing different things. Different brands have different needs, et cetera, et cetera. But I think like by and large, if you think about it as like now one person gets more leverage, so you can basically like wait to make that next hire because there's still more ROI in getting more of that person. And it's going to be really interesting. All speculation as to like what org structures look like in the next 5 to 10 years. Again, my 2 cents are the kind of two examples I shared of like I didn't know those are going to be two of the most critical roles in the marketing realm, like cross-functional channel mix oversight and strategy. I think is going to be more common, and then additionally the creative. I think the value of the best creative person is about to get like multiplied multiple times. I think those are the two trends I see.
I think there's also possibly, this is maybe a hot take that is like, maybe this doesn't end up happening, but I could see how this could be possible. I could see demand planning getting absorbed either into the marketing org or the finance org. And I'm talking about SKU level, like inventory planning, deciding how much to buy of what. I could see some of the stuff on the operations side of the business getting pulled into marketing or finance, and you having either a CMO who can oversee the, real tech enabled ad buying and creative strategy and maybe the inventory planning, right? Or you could have a CFO who's like, hey, I've got one person who works for me. They manage with AI all the bookkeeping and the FP&A for me, and they do all the demand planning and inventory planning. And that finance team of two now handles some of the operations functions. The reason why I'm saying it could get absorbed into marketing or finance, I think it depends on who the leaders of those seats are, right? And the people
100%.
and the type of the brand and the dynamics within the brand. But I could see it getting a little bit more blurry of like departmental functions, like um like kind of verticals, and a little bit more blended. And the reason why I believe so wholeheartedly in this, I mean, I was the CFO and COO at Guardian, and if I had AI to help me with some of the cross-functional data challenges, we could have continued to keep inventory planning and logistics under the finance org for a really, really long time, right? I will say furthermore, like inside Free to Grow CFO, I have one EA who we're always like, hey, can you just use AI for that? She's a bookkeeper, a podcast editor, a marketing coordinator, and a sales assistant. And the reason why we haven't hired another person is because she's finding a lot of like tech enabled tools, a lot of which use AI to just help her be this multifunctional badass EA that transcends several functions in the business. So I think we're going to see more of that for sure, and in businesses of all kinds.
Yeah, I the inventory planning piece is interesting. We're building Alan. I have my opinions on like the marketing side, but I think I know where that also has its limits. So like, I think that like the people who are driving the sales via the marketing and advertising channels should probably have the best idea of what they expect to sell through. And I would argue better than that of a CFO. However, what the marketing org doesn't have traditionally is the context of how much can I afford to buy or what makes sense based off of my cash flow planning, my targeted distribute. Like, I think that like both kind of have to have a seat at the table when done well. But I think what most people don't get right about demand planning is the marketing team never really contributes much to the demand planning conversation. And there's like a demand planning team, a finance team, a marketing team, and they have to all kind of sit together at times and actually do a better job communicating to drive the optimal outcome that the shareholders want, the owner wants, so on and so forth. So I think the answer to me is I think inventory connects marketing and finance, and that's something that I'm like realizing more and more, and I think that there's actually going to be a lot more collaboration in this kind of next phase of ecom between marketing and finance around inventory planning. And again, this will be different brand to brand, more SKUs, more talk about inventory planning. But I think that that's kind of the one of the next kind of phases of evolutions for how some of these orgs operate.
Totally agree, man. Man, this was a good one. What final thoughts do you have?
I may look back at this in 3 months and watch this episode and be like, oh, I was so wrong. What was I thinking? But hopefully not. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I would say my final thought is like, don't freak out about AI. Don't ignore it, but don't freak out about it. Mess around with it, right? And just learn about what's possible. And I think there's actually a lot of leverage in figuring out how AI uniquely fits into your business. I think no two ecom brands are going to use AI exactly the same. No two fractional CFO firms are going to use it exactly the same. Again, business is all about finding leverage points that drive outsized returns and durability, right, in the marketplace. And so think about AI the same way. In what's my unique value proposition to the marketplace where I can not just get leverage to save, like, cool, it's leverage to save a few $1,000s on not hiring someone, but where's the leverage to drive home my real value proposition in the market? And how do I use AI for that? How do I get leverage and durability? I think if you just think about that and just always are open to messing around with it, you'll figure it out and it'll probably continue to evolve over time. So, yeah, man. AI. That's what's up. This is a good one. And that's a wrap.